Hey everybody, welcome to episode 4. As you can see, I've drilled out the holes for the tube sockets. This is for the 6 AQ5s right here, the output tubes. This is for my 12AX7, which is my preamp tube. And this is for my 6 AB6 right there, which is the inverter tube. So I've drilled out this one and realized that some of you may not have seen how to do this, so I'll just do one for you. So I used a step bit to do these. And I made sure that when I put the sockets in there, for example, underneath, you can see it's nice and clean, nothing touching. So all we're really going to do now is just drill these holes here to hold the socket in. And there's a free bird if anybody's interested. So first thing we're going to do is mark it where we want it. I'm going to put a little mark with a marker there. Now these 7-pin tubes are a little tricky because they're really small. And there's not a lot of play here. So what I do is I use one of these punches. This way I don't have to worry about the bit skating around. Just push down like that. It makes a nice little dimple. And we'll push down right here, like so. Now the bit that you need to use for these can't be too big because there's not a lot of meat here. So we're going to use something a little bit smaller. We're going to use 4mm screws to secure these 7-pin sockets. So we're going to put this bit away, and we're going to use a bit like that. So let's get that going. Okay. Now simply put it into the dimple that you made, like that, and press. You got to remember, I'm going through 2 layers of metal here because I have this plate on, so it's taking a little bit longer. And we'll do the second one. Okay. Flip it over. Now usually you have to deburr these things. I have a deburr tool, but it's too big for this kind of hole. It's too small. So I'll just use an old pair of snippers here. And just snip off anything that doesn't belong there. Like so. This way when I put the screw on there, it's nice and flush to the chassis. Okay. Let's put in our socket. Lines up perfectly. Okay. I'm not going to show you how I screw it in because that's easy. You should all know how to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and drill the holes for these two. Then I'll mount all the sockets. And we'll come back. Okay, we have all of our tubes mounted, like so. Everything's mounted correctly in the right place. 12AX7 will be right here with the volume control and the tone controls, direct wire, and to the input jack. Perfect placement. Output tubes right here, and the output transformer will be mounted somewhere around here. And this is my inverter tube. Transformer goes right here. And I've made sure that all the clearances are good here when the faceplate goes on. So there is a dead spot in the middle of the faceplate, and that's exactly where this tube's going to go. On the bottom side, you'll see that everything is in place. I do have one little issue with this right here. This is a ceramic tube socket. And if I put the nut on here, I'm going to crack this. Now, fortunately, this is threaded, so it actually is very tight. So I'm not going to put a nut on this one. I drilled the hole small enough that it actually threaded itself, so I'm not going to worry too much about that one. This one is obviously tight enough, so not going to be a problem. It's not going to loosen up. But that's where we are. So now we're going to, essentially just clean this thing up a little bit, and we're going to start plotting our wiring. So we'll get rid of all this drawing under here with some alcohol and clean it up, and make sure when we're done it looks neat. That's the plan. So now we're going to start plotting our wiring and start taking it from there. So I'll come back in a little bit when I have a little more update on what I'm going to do with my wiring. I want to take my time and lay it out right because I don't want to do it again. So I'm only going to do it once. Okay? Alright folks, I'll be back. Okay, we're making some really good progress. you'll see that we have all of our filaments. I used solid 22 gauge wire for my filaments, and everything is twisted and low down to the chassis. And I'm going to secure these down here and make sure they stay nice and flat. But you'll see that it ends here on this 6AV6 tube, comes here to the 12AX7, goes to the two 6AQ5s, and then comes back over here and comes up to this terminal strip. Now, these brown wires are the 6.3 volt winding. Now, this transformer has a center tap, but I'm not using the center tap. And the reason why I'm doing that is to reduce hum. So basically, what I'm doing is I'm putting a 100 ohm resistor from each end of the filament line to ground, okay? And that's going to prevent hum across the entire chassis. And all I'm going to do is just cut off this this center tap and seal it off. I also have a wire running out here through the top of the chassis, like so, right here. And this is going to feed the pilot light, which goes on the front panel. The front panel is going to be mounted right here, and this will feed my my pilot light. So so basically, the 6.3 volt rail is complete. All that's left to do now is install a fuse holder, install a power cord, that type of thing, and then I can actually test it. You'll notice that I also have my high voltage side connected right here, center tap going to ground, either side going to a terminal strip, going to a diode. This is an N1N4007 on either end, and they're both going to come to this one terminal strip, and from here, that's my B plus voltage. So I haven't soldered this yet, obviously, but I've got this in place, and this will be ready to test out as well. So that's done. So I think the next step here is going to be to start mapping out the wiring in this area. Again, this amp doesn't have a lot of components, so it's really not bad. There's plenty of real estate in here. The main thing for me is I want to keep these filament lines twisted and low to the chassis, and I definitely won't have any noise problems with this amp. So that's where we are, and I think the next step for me is going to get all this power section done, and I'll probably end up doing a filament test just to make sure the filaments work. So so that's going to be the next step. All right. I'll come back when that's ready to go. Okay, we've got our power cord coming in. We have our hot side coming over to the fuse, back to the transformer, and then I have my neutral side coming out the top here, and that's going to connect to the power switch on the front panel. I've also cut off the center tap for the 6.3 volt winding and the 220 volt lead that came off of the transformer, and I put some heat shrink on those. So once I mount the front panel on here and get the power switch connected, I should be able to do a test and see if the filaments are working. Of course, we'll monitor the B+. I expect the B+ to be probably around 300 volts or so, DC. There's no load on it, obviously. But that's we'll see something around there somewhere, I would imagine. But we're just going to test the filaments and make sure the filaments are lighting up. So instead of connecting the front panel, I think I'm just going to put a switch across the two white wires here and test it that way. I don't want to get the front panel all connected and then have to remove it when I'm working underneath here. So that's going to be the plan. So let me light that up. Be right back. We're going to do our first test here. So I've got all the tubes installed, and I have the indicator light gator wired to the 6.3 volt filament winding that I have up here. I have a 2 amp fuse. It's going to be hard to see filaments in these things. Some of these tubes are very hard to see to begin with, and it's very bright up here. So I'm not sure if I'm going to see the filaments, but I'll do it tonight when it gets darker. Let's just power it on, see if the indicator light works, and we'll take it from there. I have a switch hardwired in here. I'm going to start the variac at 0. Let's bring it up. Power's on. Looks like my bulb is starting to glow. That's good. Good sign. We're at 100 volts. Just going to let that bake for a minute. We're up at 115. Let's see if I could see any filaments here. And these tubes are very hard to see. Alright, I can't see any filaments here. I'm actually going to throw these on the tube tester as well, make sure they're all good. I should do that. The 12AX7 is a new tube, the other ones are old stock. Anyway, I know that my filament winding is good at least, and I haven't checked the B plus yet, so let me do that. Be right back. Okay, I have my my meter connected to my B plus, coming right off of those diodes. Probably going to see around 200 volts. Let's see what we get. 203. It's about right. Good. Anybody want a bird? So our B plus looks good. Our 6.3 volt filament looks good. Again, I don't see any filaments glowing here. So I'm going to go test these tubes out, and we'll come back later and see what happens when it's dark up here. Be back. So I just want to show you, I have the 6AV6 in the night tester, and you see that filament glow? I'm not seeing that in the amp, so we're going to go back to the drawing board on that. I'm going to check the other tubes. Let's see, make sure they all work. Be right back. Same thing's true on the 6AQ5. There's a nice filament glower right here. And the tube tests good. Alright, we'll just do the rest and then we'll go into the chassis and see what the issue is. Be back. Okay, problem solved. We have filament on all these tubes now. And the issue was a cold solder joint. So fixed it, and we've got filament glow. So we are good to go to the next stage. Alright, I think I'm going to end this video here. And the next episode we'll be working on the underneath and getting all those components put in place. But we've gotten pretty far today. We've got our transformer installed, we've got our fuse holder installed, we've got our tubes, sockets installed, connected, we've got filament voltage, we've got a pilot light here, which is looking good. And we also checked our B+, so we know that our B+ is good too. So I think we're ready for the next episode to start working on some more. Alright everybody, thank you, and we will see you in the next episode. Hope everybody's well.